World War I erupted during the summer of 1914 due to the assassination of Austrian Archduke, which led to the major European powers engaging in a conflict. The Ottomans entered the war because of the Black Sea Raid. The raid was between Ottoman and German naval commanders to trick Russia into attacking the Ottoman navy and making it look like Russia had instigated a war against Ottoman Empire. On October 29, 1914, the Ottoman Empire entered the war by joining Central Forces. In the beginning, Ottoman Empire had approximately 210,000 soldiers, and by the end of the war, 3 million had served in uniform. The empire entered three major battles: Caucasus Campaign with Russians, Gallipoli Campaign between Allied and Central Powers, and the Sinai and Palestinian Campaign. The Gallipoli Campaign ended as a major loss for the Allies. The war came to an end in 1918 with the Armistice of Mudros. After the Armistice of Mudros, which was supposed to be a truce, Allied powers started to occupy Ottoman lands. They started leaving the Turkish army completely unarmed and powerless. For 6 months, the Turks suffered a lot from the occupiers in their lands. Then on May 19, 1919, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk landed on Samsun, which marked the beginning of the Turkish War of Independence. Mustafa Kemal Atatürk was born in 1881 in Salonika, which is modern-day Greece. Back then it was Ottoman. His dad was a merchant, which made him want to be in the military too. He went to a military junior high school, military high school, and 2 military colleges. During World War I, he served on the Gallipoli, Caucasus, and Syrian-Palestinian fronts, becoming one of the important commanders in the Ottoman army. He brought the Gallipoli victory to the Ottomans. During the war, he left the army and went to Anatolia's Star Revolution and stopped uprisings. He was a smart man who loved his country, which inspired him to fight for it. He was very invested in always developing himself. He was a mathematical and political genius. And because people had seen how successful he was during World War I, the nation had already trusted him with his intelligence. Here's a little story from one of Atatürk's adopted kids, Ülkü.
Her sabah Atatürk'ü ben uyandırdım. Fakat bazı zaman etraftan derlerdi ki çok geç yattı, uyandırma dedikleri zaman ben de kendisini uyandırmaya kıyamaz ve bana başka zaman verdiği boyama kitapları vardı ve Ülkü bunları çok dikkatli bir şekilde boya demişti bana ve ben de bunları kendisini uyandırmamak için orada kapının önüne oturur ve bunları boyardım. Bu arada bu kitaplar bitmiş olacak ki bir gün gene kendisini uyandırmaya gittim. Fakat aman uyandırma dediler, çok geç yattı dediler. Ben de gene kendisini uyandırmaya kıyamadım. Her zaman pabuçlarını dışarı bırakırdı ve bunlar boyanırdı. Bu arada orada kahverengi bir pabuç gördüm. Boyanmış ve gıcır gıcır bir vaziyetteydi. Fakat rengini beğenmemiş olacağım ki boya kutularının arasına gittim ve bir siyah boya aldım. Ve kahverengi pabucu siyaha boyamaya başladım. Bu işe o kadar dalmış olmalıyım ki uyandırmayı bile unutmuşum. Ve Atatürk'ün sesiyle irkildim. Ülkü ne yapıyorsun diye. Birdenbire belki yaptığım işin bir suç olduğunu herhalde anladım ki korkuyla Atatürk'ün yüzüne baktım. Fakat o bana gayet sevimli bir şekilde bakıyordu. Niye öyle boyuyorsun Ülkü dediği zaman Atatürk'cüğüm bu rengi beğenmedim, elbisene uymuyordu dedim. Ve kendisi de beni gülerek aferin iyi yapmışsın dedi.
Before May 19th, there were uprisings and local irregular military forces called Kuvayi Milliye around the country. The Grand Vizier of the time, Damat Ferit Pasha, was unhappy about the uprisings because the British forces were holding him accountable. On May 19th, Mustafa Kemal talked to the press saying that the uprisings and resistings against the Allied forces should continue because this is the only way we are going to win our lands and freedom back. Here's what İsmet İnönü, who is Turkey's second president and one of the commanders of the war, said about the time.
Memleket tahmin olunmayacak kadar bir karışıklık içinde ve ümitsizlik içindeydi. Bununla beraber herkes diplomat ve herkes çare bulur bir ukala halindeydi. Muharebeyle bu seferin düşmandan kurtuluşun muntazam muharebeyle nihayet biteceği ihtimali hiç kimsenin zihninde yoktu.
The Ottoman government was afraid of the British and the Allies, so were supportive of the War of Independence, while nationalists were creating uprisings all over the country and following Mustafa Kemal Atatürk's path on forming a new independent government. On June 22nd, 1919, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk issued a national circular saying, "The Sultan and the government are under pressure in Istanbul and can't decide freely. Only determination of the nation will save the country. The War of Independence begins." During this process, many beneficial and harmful societies, associations, and organizations emerged. The public reactions were divided. While some remained loyal to the Sultan or favored mandates, the nationalist movement gained significant popular support, fueled by the resistance to foreign occupation and perceived betrayal by Sultan's government. Many governments and sultans changed because the British were constantly threatening the newly formed governments with releasing the Greek forces. So many governments and sultans were afraid of them and tried to make the nation and Mustafa Kemal Atatürk stop the war. They formed military forces to stop nationalists and Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. However, he was determined to gain independence back. On April 23, 1920, the Grand Turkish Assembly was formed under the leadership of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. On April 26, 1920, a congress was convened to force the Ottoman Empire to sign the Treaty of Sèvres. As a representative of the Ottoman Empire, Tevfik Pasha, who was against the War of Independence, attended the congress. The Treaty of Sèvres was so heavy for the Ottoman Empire, possibly being the empire's official end. To make the Ottoman Empire sign the Treaty of Sèvres, Allied powers released Greek forces. The Greek forces occupied the west coast of Turkey, including cities like Bursa, Balıkesir, Izmir. Allied powers' plans worked and the Ottoman Empire signed the Treaty of Sèvres. Irregular military forces acknowledged that they weren't going to be able to win the lands back with that strategy, so under the leadership of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, the Turks changed into a regular military system. The attack, called the Great Offensive that ended the war, started on August 16, 1922. On August 30, 1922, the attack ended with the Battle of the Commander-in-Chief. And August 30th was declared as the Victory Day for the Turkish nation. The Armistice of Mudanya was signed with Italy, France, and Britain on October 11, 1922, kicking the Greek out of the country. The international response was mainly negative because the other nations were glad that the Ottoman Empire was failing and had concerns that Mustafa Kemal Atatürk would grow too powerful. Some commented on Atatürk's intelligence. Lord George once said, "It is very unfortunate for us that the great genius of this era came up from the Turkish nation. There was nothing to be done against the brilliance of Mustafa Kemal." While Mahatma Gandhi said, "We thought British were invincible until Atatürk defeated them." With the War of Independence coming to an end, it was time to set a new country with the Turkish Grand Assembly. On October 29, 1923, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk formed the Turkish Republic and became its first president. He gave a speech on October 29, 1933 on the 10th anniversary of the Republic.
Bugün Cumhuriyetimizin 10. yılını doldurdum. En büyük bayramdır. Kutlu olsun. Bu anda büyük Türk milletinin bir ferdi olarak bu kutlu güne kavuşmanın en derin sevinci ve heyecanı içindeyim. Yurttaşlarım, az zamanda çok ve büyük işler yaptık. Bu işlerin en büyük temeli Türk kahramanlığı ve yüksek Türk kültürü olan Türkiye Cumhuriyeti'dir.
Once he started his presidency, he made several reforms to modernize and reorder Turkey from the remains of the Ottoman Empire. Some of his main reforms were abolition of the Sultanate and the Caliphate, recognition of equal rights among men and women, closure of mausoleums and dervish lodges, closing of sacred tombs as places of worship, transition to a secular legal system, surname law, change to the Latin alphabet, and restrictions for religious sects. He did all of his reforms under his 6 principles: republicanism, nationalism, populism, statism, secularism, and revolutionism. With these principles, a new ideology emerged called Kemalism, inspired by Mustafa Kemal Atatürk's name. There were of course people who were against the ideology. Different types of disagreements occurred. These disagreements included people who support the new republican regime versus people who wanted the continuation of the Sultanate regime, which also set the groundwork for other conflicts such as secularism versus traditionalism. But these didn't stop Mustafa Kemal Atatürk or his reforms. He continued doing his reforms and moving the country further until his death in 1938.
Büyük Atatürk, 1938 Kasım'ının 10. günü saat 9'u 5 geçe geçici dünyaya gözlerini yumdu. Harflerle, kelimelerle, resimlerle anlatamayacak bir acının içerisinde kulaklarda onun bir cümlesi çınlıyordu. Benim naçiz vücudum bir gün elbette ki toprak olacaktır. Fakat Türkiye Cumhuriyeti ilelebet payidar kalacaktır.
Without him and people who supported him in this journey, there wouldn't be a Turkey we know today. The Turks would be living under the protection of the Allied powers without their sovereignty. As Bill Clinton once said, Shakespeare wrote, Einstein thought, and Atatürk built.